So, you want to just take it?
Sure. Do you have ads and stuff?
I'll add those in later. So
all right,
yeah.
cool.
So we'll just start off right away. Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm good whenever we're
Okay.
rolling.
And we're going.
Okay, Aaron.
Hey, Ryan.
So this is Ryan Heavyhead. Aaron has asked me to interview him today about his recent ayahuasca retreat.
Yeah.
Something I've been looking forward to hearing about ever since he told me he was going to go down to Peru and undertake this. It's quite an undertaking, quite a ordeal.
Yeah.
Put oneself through, I think, for I don't know what we'll call it, a healing or a spiritual awakening or what have it. We'll get to that part.
You bet, yeah. A little bit of everything.
That's right. So, I can't remember exactly, and I guess we'll start here. I can't remember exactly, you had told me before you went, I think some months ago, you had told me you were going to go and do this, and you had at that time mentioned a couple of influences, but I'm wondering, what really led you to want to undertake this?
Sure. Well, so first of all, before we get rolling, I want to give a shout out. So some of the folks actually that sort of journeyed with me. So to Paul and Elias and Katie, they were all first time like me with at Nika's there, the place that I went to. They're all first time with ayahuasca. Right. So I just want to say, hey guys, how's it going? I actually, we'll hopefully catch up down the road. But
are these guys that you met down there?
Yeah, they were all. Two were from the UK. Katie was from Phoenix. Right. So yeah, so it was a lot of Brits down there.
Really?
Yeah. So, but to answer your question, I'd heard about ayahuasca probably 10, 15 years ago. Actually, oddly enough, the first time I heard it, it was called something different. It was Yahe, but it was from the X-Files.
Right. Actually,
it was sort of the first time. But really, the first person to actually introduce me to ayahuasca in terms of the discussion was actually Graham Hancock. Right. I had listened to a podcast that he did with Joe Rogan a few years back, actually. And Graham had also written a book where he talks about a variety of different things about iboga and that sort of thing, but also ayahuasca. And almost right from the get-go, I had sort of that first gut reaction of somebody, that grew up in the 80s and 90s. Drugs are bad. Stay away from it, you know.
Right.
So, it took me a little while to kind of get over that piece of it, because I was actually I hadn't read Graham's book by that time.
This is the book that was the follow-up to Fingerprints of God.
Well, it was Supernatural, and so it took pieces of it, and where he talks about sort of basically what switched on human consciousnness, about 40,000 years ago was, the theory, and it was Terence McKenna talked about it, but Graham he did a real in-depth analysis of archaeologically and and that sort of thing, cave paintings and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I remember there's a cave painting on the cover, and there's some talk about people going through rituals where they're deep into these caves.
Right, yeah, and that the similarities of the pictures from the cave all point to a similar human experience, which a lot of people are now saying was probably when people were trying different food sources, they were hitting on psychedelics, usually mushrooms, right? And so I was intrigued. I didn't really feel the need to experiment in that way, but as time went on, I started to listen to Graham and Joe Rogan and Amber Lyon, like you talked about, and Amber's experience in a lot of ways was very similar to mine. Is that I have no background at all, none. Right. In psychedelics or any other, using any other substances. I tried marijuana once, but it did absolutely nothing for me. Like, I don't know, it was, and it's fairly recently, really. No physical reaction at all.
Really?
And no psychedelic experience at all, but as time went on, and then there were some documentaries that came out. So DMT, the spirit molecule, which talked about Rick Strassman. He's a psychologist at the, I think it's University of New Mexico. And he did some of the first clinical trials with psychedelics in basically 25 years in the States. He got permission to do it, and he used pure DMT, so an injected form of pure DMT. And the experiences that came out of that, and then hearing about Gabor Mate in Canada, Dr. Gabor Mate using ayahuasca to help people with addictions and that sort of thing. So my level of intrigue really increased with that. And not just, from the therapeutic side of things, but also Graham, continues, and other people continue to talk about ayahuasca, especially for use as part of a ceremonial or the spiritual journeying.
Right.
So I wanted, after a while, I kind of got over that mental hurdle in my head and the deprogramming that the war on drugs has given all of us for about 40, 50 years, saying these are only bad, there's nothing good can come from it, stay away, you're going to get hurt, etc., etc., etc. I left that bullshit behind because it's pure bullshit. It really is, especially things that are natural. In the world, so ayahuasca is a purely natural, comes from the jungle. Things like psilocybin, I've never tried psilocybin, but things like things like that.
Yeah, it's just a broad categorization. I think that discourse comes from people's experience with folks that have got strung out on coke or meth, or some other kind of drug that's you see their lives go off the deep end, but that's not everybody's experience.
Exactly,
especially with hallucinogens.
And it's a very different experience. And in fact, ayahuasca and other substances are used to help people with addictions. Like iboga apparently is also from Africa. It's that one you have to be really careful with apparently, because it'll kill you if you have if you do it with somebody who's not experienced, and if you take too much into your system, or if you have liver issues and that sort of thing, it can actually do you in. But if you know somebody that that is familiar with it and works with it, it can be highly, highly effective. Like heroin addicts in particular, with iboga, enormous success rates, way more than any traditional. Any sort of Western concept of addiction treatment, way more effective. And alcoholism. Ayahuasca, so there's a clinic down in Peru, in the north, called Takiwasi, and it had, for heroin addicts and alcoholics, it's for men, by the way. I found that out because I actually did some investigation, because I have a family member that really struggles with alcoholism. Was hoping that they would go down there, but unfortunately that particular clinic is only for men, and it's a woman that I was thinking about, but highly effective. So that's where my interest came in, and I've been looking for opportunities where I could try it. And then this trip to Peru was suggested. Not for this, but just a trip to Peru. Was suggested by my roommate, and she's actually going next week to Peru. She is not doing a retreat. She's doing the sightseeing thing, which is what mostly I did down there too. But the opportunity was there, and I said, well, okay, time to put my money where my mouth is, and let's walk the walk here. And I did.
Right on. Well, that makes sense, because I was wondering if it was, if it was a pursuit for some kind of therapy for yourself, or if it was, specifically for some spiritual growth, or if it was like Amber Lyons described. For her, it was almost like the ayahuasca was calling her. She had to go do that. But I can see, I know you're a big fan of Graham Hancock's work, and after reading his stuff, you gotta go to Peru and see it with your own eyes. And if you're there already, and you've had this interest in ayahuasca, I could see why you would be pulled.
And I gotta tell you, Ryan, the way that this lined up, I could interpret it in no other way than a call. So there's a few reasons why I said that. So I wanted to go, But like you said, it wasn't a particular healing that I thought that I needed.
Right. It wasn't because your life was in crisis.
Yeah.
You were going down there for an answer.
Exactly. Yeah. But it was. I mean, the intentions, and we can talk a little bit more about this down, as we go along too. But my intention was really to see what ayahuasca, the teachings that the ayahuasca would give me in terms of reaching my full potential and growing spiritually, and that, but more initially anyway, more in a general sense.
Right.
But the calling of it was incredible, because it just happened that I happened upon this place. It fit perfectly in my itinerary that I had already partially set for going down there. And the philosophy of the clinic, so the spirituality behind the clinic, and we can talk about this too.
Yeah.
Almost dovetailed, and without even looking I booked the trip, then looked at the spiritual philosophy of it, which seems weird and bizarre, I'm sure.
Right.
It was almost a perfect fit. It was incredible. I couldn't believe it when I was reading. It was almost so there for me. It was sort of, the call kind of happened afterwards, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
The validation that I had, I guess it was more a validation than a call,
right.
that I had made the right choice.
Right.
That doing this, but not only doing this, but this particular place that I went to was going to be the fit.
Right.
That I needed it to be.
You mean because of the dovetail with the traditional Amazonian ayahuascan traditions and the Christianity? The
Christianity. It's funny though, because the place is owned and run by a guy who practices Japanese Buddhism. So there's a Buddhist altar in the main hall.
There is a little bit of a Buddhist connection there too. In fact, I think on the website they even have pictures of some of the what do you call them, the maestros or
the maestros
with the
Dalai Lama. They met the Dalai Lama. Yeah. So to give people an idea, to tell them where this is, so the place is called Itnikas, and usually a lot of the places that are, where people go to ayahuasca is in the north of Peru, in Iquitos, in the jungle.
Right.
So to give people a little bit of background first about that, I don't know a lot about sort of the chemical background of it.
Right.
I know, so first of all, ayahuasca is the tea, that we call ayahuasca. It goes by different names. So the vine of souls, it goes by different names in the jungle, is a combination of two plants.
Right.
And so it was discovered probably about 3,500, 4,000 years ago. And as it's only been described by some ethnobotanists and pharmacological academics as a pharmacological miracle. Because out of 100,000, 150,000 plants, the people that lived in the Amazon somehow figured out how to combine these two plants together to make the tea.
Right.
And initially that doesn't sound like it'd be any particular big thing, but so the psychoactive ingredient in ayahuasca is dimethyltryptamine, or DMT.
Right.
Which is something that our body produces anyway. It's only recently been identified as being produced in the pineal gland, in the brain. They suspected it for a long time, and they found evidence in rats, but apparently they've actually found evidence now that in humans it actually is produced in the pineal gland.
Right.
So dimethyltryptamine, it's very close to tryptophan, and it's widely, which, in Turkey, and, it's the thing that's supposed to make you sleepy, although apparently it's not actually the thing that makes you sleepy. Yeah. But it's the thing about DMT is that it's everywhere. It permeates through nature. And there's different theories about why it exists. Some people have said it's to keep certain bugs away from the plants, from eating it. But in reality, even a lot of academics say that it's actually a modality of communication between plants and the outside world. So there's a lot of mystery as to why DMT exists. So there's certain plants. So in the Amazon, the DMT is there in the plants. It's also in the acacia bush, I believe.
It's in several plants down there, right?
Yeah.
It's not just the one. It's actually the DMT is sourced in several different plants.
Yeah.
But then there's the ayahuasca, which kind of activates the DMT so that it can be absorbed orally, right?
So because ordinarily DMT is not you can't ordinarily ingest, I think it's the chacruna leaf that has it's either the chacruna leaf or the ayahuasca is what's switched on. I think it's the chacruna that actually has the DMT.
Right.
So if my understanding is if you just drank or ate chacruna leaf, nothing's going to happen because your body, your liver has what's called monoamine oxidase inhibitors, which keeps the DMT from having a psychoactive effect.
Right.
The miracle behind ayahuasca is that they found the ayahuasca plant, which deactivates the monoamine oxidase inhibitors and allows the DMT to be taken in an oral form.
Right.
That's the pharmacological miracle, that they found these two plants that work together to actually allow people to have this experience.
Right.
That's the pharmacological miracle, and out of 150,000 plants in the Amazon, they found these two, and like you said, there are a couple of others as well that have it, but these two in particular, that actually this works. And you asked the Shipibo and different people in the Amazon, how did you discover it? They'll tell you, the spirits told us that
Right.
this is how we were supposed to combine these together, and so that we could communicate with the spiritual realm.
Yeah, it's always mind blowing to look at some of the traditional medicines around the world, the pharmacological medicines, and wonder how the heck did
they came up
these
with
combinations.
Yeah.
Some of them are really, really complex. It's not only just brewing a couple
Right.
of different plants together for a long time.
Yeah.
But really pulling out certain chemical components and mixing it.
It's amazing.
It's very complex.
Yeah. So in terms of making the ayahuasca, I mean, the process is also very traditional, very ceremonial. So the way that it was described to me was, so the place that I went to is not in the Amazon. I was going to say because it's in the Sacred Valley just outside of Cusco.
Right.
So they have to bring in the ayahuasca tea to the facility because they don't brew it there themselves.
So it's not made on the site.
It's not made on site because they don't have the component ingredients to do
Right.
it there. They don't have the chacruna, they don't have so they bring it in. So a lot of people, they're a little iffy about that.
So do those plant components, do they need to be botanical components need to be fresh? Is that why? Or
Well, I think so. At least when you brew it, because I suspect it's like anything else. Probably, I don't know for sure, but I suspect it's like even the coca leaves. So coca leaves are a big thing in Peru. Everybody has coca tea. Everybody chews on coca leaves. It says it's from cocaine, right? So
Right.
it's
a stimulant. Like,
it's
is
stimulant.
it like their coffee?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
But I found when there were leaves that weren't as fresh,
Yeah.
the effect was not nearly as pronounced. So it could very well be, I'm guessing, that if the initial component ingredients aren't fresh, the effect may not be as profound.
Right.
But also, I mean, it just happens to be that's where it's at. So why not produce it there, and you can bring it out.
Right.
So how they do it is they get a big pot, and today they use big metal pots. Back in history, apparently they used ceramics.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So over a fire, what they'll do is they'll layer the two component, and it's a very specific layering that they do. So the first layer that goes into the pot is the chacruna leaf, and then they put a layer of the ayahuasca vine on top, and another layer of chacruna leaf, and then another layer of ayahuasca on top, and then another layer of chacruna. And the top and bottom layers, as it was described to me, is always the chacruna leaf. It's the traditional way of doing it, and then you add water, and you boil the crap out of it for hours.
Right.
And then what happens is so it the components enter into the water, and you make a tea out of it, and you sort of strain it into containers, and that's your ayahuasca.
Right. Is it a? I heard it's a thick tea.
It is. Yeah. It's really quite thick. It's not molassesy. It's
Right.
kind of like it's almost like a thinner milkshake. That would kind of be the consistency of it that I would say.
Yeah, something like a smoothie that's partly melted.
Kinda, yeah.
Not cold.
Yeah. No, it's not cold. It's room
Right.
temperature, right? I mean, and that's how during the ceremony, that's how they give it to you. So it's a thicker substance, but it's not. At least the ayahuasca that I had was a thicker. I mean, maybe it's different for different ways of brewing it. I don't know, but it is a thicker. It's sort of a dark, reddy brown color.
Okay.
The smell is not fantastic.
No.
The taste, how would I describe it? You wouldn't want to drink this. Oh, I mean, for a variety of reasons, but just because of the taste.
Yeah.
The taste was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And we'll talk. I had some stuff the day before in preparation, and we'll talk about that.
The volcano
water,
yeah,
which I
I'm
actually
looking forward to hearing about.
Oh,
that.
I can still taste both of them in my mouth when I think about it. And if somebody was to say which one would you prefer, I'd say give me the ayahuasca because it tastes better.
Right.
It's disgusting. The volcanic water, just gross. It's a tangy bitter, which if that makes any sense, it's a and it. I mean, it sticks with you in your mouth,
right?
For a little while, and the taste is there. You have to try not to toss it back up. I didn't actually have any problems with that. I was actually okay taking it, and I didn't really have an instinct to vomit right away. The tea. Some people do. Some people just can't handle the taste of it. They just want to throw it up, and if you do that, it's not going to work. But we'll talk about sort of how that process
got to keep
works.
it down, yeah, for a while.
So exactly. Yeah. So it doesn't taste great. Some people have described it as tasting horrid. I don't know. I've tasted more horrid things than I have the ayahuasca, so we'll put it out there. But it would not be, like I said, it would not be my drink of choice if it was something you were just drinking, on a patio somewhere.
Yeah, it's not a nice tasting tea.
No, it's not. So yeah, that's so what they do then is they bottle it up, and it's funny because it's a sacred plant.
Right.
It's treated as a sacred plant by everybody. But how did it arrive at the facility? I think one was in an old washed out Coke bottle. Or Coke, like a plastic Coke container. One was in an old plastic water bottle, and they still had some of the labels on them. So I had to giggle a little bit because it's treated if the ceremony is done right, and if the place that you're doing it is done right, it's treated very ceremoniously, and very reverently.
Right.
But it's funny, the container that it was in was these old washed out.
It's just a reused something.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the things that I really appreciated about sort of the spirituality piece. So I come out of the Roman Catholic tradition where, when you have communion, gold-plated chalices to reflect the reverence. There's an element of practicality that comes along with the traditional spirituality down there. Well, yeah, it's reverent, but who the hell cares what container it's in? Right. Nobody really cares about the container. That's not important. Who cares? Exactly. It's the substance itself that is, that's treated. So just that was an interesting difference in terms of perspective. That I kind of giggled a little bit the first night when I saw it, and but after a while I gained an appreciation for it, thinking, okay, what's really important about this?
Yeah.
Is it the lofty container, or is it actually the respect for the substance itself?
Right.
Yeah. So that's ayahuasca, and it comes from the Amazon. And I don't know how they transport it, because the maestros there are two different kinds of maestros, and we can talk about that too. One is the Shipibo, which is who are from the Amazon. They are from the jungle, and they come to the facility. So yeah. Right. So.
And then the other.
The other is the other. So there's Etnika's there. So maybe just to give you a little bit of an idea about the facility. So it's in the Sacred Valley in Peru. Beautiful area. Near Pisac, the old archaeological Inca site, Pisac, about an hour from Cusco. The elevation isn't quite as high as Cusco, which I was very thankful of, because of course Cusco's way up, about 35 to 4,000 meters above sea level.
Right.
Just to give people an indication, Lethbridge is at about 1,000 meters above sea level. So I didn't get altitude sickness really. I was short of breath. Of course, and I hadn't slept for 36 hours, 48 hours by the time I got to Cusco.
Right.
So I couldn't check into my hotel. I got there at about 10 in the morning, couldn't check into my hostel until 1 o'clock. And so what did Aaron do? Aaron said, screw altitude sickness. I'm going to go climb that mountain over there.
Oh yeah.
And I'm
yeah,
going to go
remember.
see Sacsayhuaman, which is the great Inca, which is the great fortress that's above Cusco. And I have a ton of pictures of that. And actually, I mentioned Graham Hancock in a post on it.
Right.
He liked the post, so he actually was watching. I felt pretty honored by that. But yeah, it's kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, so like for 2 days, it's a good thing I had 2 days in Cusco before the retreat, because you really have to climatize, and even during the retreat, going upstairs, because I was so the way that the retreat place is laid out, it's in a town, and it's actually a house. Somebody bought it's a fairly sizable house, and I think they bought 2 lots, because there's one area for the staff that's there, and then one area where they have like the main hall where we did these ayahuasca ceremonies, but also the other ceremonies that we'll talk about. And I didn't realize it at the time, but there's actually an infirmary on site. They actually had a full.
I know they on the webpage they said they had a nurse there.
Throughout every ayahuasca session, there's an RN that's present.
Right.
So I'll chat a little bit about that too. But yeah, and so the facilities, there's a kitchen, there's a dining, sort of a small dining area, lots of washrooms, and then it's shared accommodations. So there's probably room, I think, for, they said, about 10 to 14 people, depending on what the accommodations look like. Beautiful grounds, hibiscus trees everywhere.
Yeah.
And they have great dogs. They have a couple of great dogs there. Lester the dog was my favorite. He's this giant golden retriever, and he just loved people. Anyway, but the staff at the retreat, so there they have, there's a few different people. So there's sort of a retreat for each group. There's a retreat coordinator. So this is somebody, there's the owner who lives on site, but he doesn't have too much to do with the daily, like the ceremonies and that sort of thing. He's not really involved in that. He just kind of manages he's the business guy behind it, right? Like I said, he's a Japanese Buddhist, so that was an interesting, it was an interesting thing, because he'd come into the main hall actually, and he'd do a few mantras and that sort of thing, quietly while there were meetings going on. So everybody's like, oh, that's interesting. So there's the retreat coordinator, and I have to give a big shout out to the one that I had when I first started. I had 2. I was sort of in a transition, so they rotate staff in and out on a 5 to 7 day basis, including the maestros actually. So Purina, she was my first retreat coordinator. She's just a beautiful soul, just wonderful. Made you feel comfortable. They call you you fast for you eat breakfast. But the days that you're doing the ayahuasca ceremonies, you don't eat lunch, you don't eat dinner, you only eat breakfast. So she'd call you for that. She'd call you for the different activities that were going on.
So these, just not to cut you off,
no.
These coordinators, do you have communication with them before you go down there?
No, they're sort of assigned to, because there's different ones that are there. And
they rotate.
They rotate. Yeah.
But what kind of, like, okay, say somebody's interested in doing this, but they feel a little bit threatened going internationally to somewhere like Peru and such.
Yeah.
So you go online on these folks' webpage, and you can order a retreat through there.
Yeah,
right?
that's how. Yeah.
And then, all right. So do they make recommendations for where you should stay to get acclimatized before you end up at the retreat?
Not really.
Pick you up to bring
they
you there,
assume you're staying in Cusco, because that's where the airport is. It's a sizable city. I think it's about 500,000 people.
Right.
It's sort of Mecca it's the archaeological capital of South America.
Right.
It is the former capital of the Inca Empire. So everybody, they assume that, because then the mineral water thing was done in Cusco as well. It wasn't done at the retreat center. So they assume you're at Cusco. But wherever you stay in Cusco is wherever you stay in Cusco. That's
Okay.
So there's no real contact. Like even the day before when I did the mineral water, it wasn't the retreat coordinator that was at the facility. It was somebody else from the main office that sort of just met you at the Plaza San Francisco in Cusco, and then they took you to the hostel where they were doing the mineral water or whatever, and then you met your retreat coordinator when you got there.
I see.
When you got to the retreat. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I lucked out. Purina was there, and I think she's about 25. Just a beautiful soul, just wonderful, and she worked with me a lot. As we'll talk about, I had some interior struggles after my first ayahuasca session. She really helped me to talk about it and to sort of work through. The second coordinator he was great. His name is Eric. He was there for my last night there. Good guy, solid guy. And during the second ayahuasca session, I'll jump ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
He was doing, one of the things they do, and like I said, we'll talk about this, is blow the tobacco over people, sort of as a protective.
Oh yeah.
But also to enhance sort of the visions as well. He was doing it, not the shaman. And I think the shaman did it initially, but he sort of did it throughout the ceremony. I don't know if he's actually in training to be a shaman.
Sounds like it.
But I got the impression through my second ayahuasca ceremony, if he isn't, he should be.
Right.
He's got what we call in Catholicism the vocation,
right.
I think, to be a maestro, because he was very comfortable. He was very helpful through the ceremony. The shaman trusted him to go around with the tobacco, and there was a relationship there, and clearly he knew what was going on. So I'm just going to turn on a light here.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I guess one question I've got in that respect is that like I have heard when you're doing the ayahuasca, the maestro does it with you.
Yeah.
Now in this case, your kind of retreat coordinator was there too. Yeah. Does the retreat coordinator do the ayahuasca?
Sometimes. And the amount that they do is minuscule.
Okay.
Minuscule, because they obviously they
can't. They gotta maintain.
They have to. Yeah, they have to. It is common for the maestro to participate in the ceremony. Right. It is common for the retreat coordinator. I don't know about the nurse. So during the ceremonies itself, there's a retreat coordinator, at least one. Sometimes they'll have other staff depending on how big the group is.
Right.
There were two my first session. There was a retreat coordinator in training, and Purina, who is my retreat coordinator, the maestro, and the nurse. So at Icnica's, and this is not common. This is not a common thing, from my understanding. It's not something that you find at a lot of retreat centers. Icnica's, the impression I got is it's very much designed for those people who it's their first time out of the gate.
Right.
That either have no psychedelic experience, and certainly no ayahuasca experience. Because the retreats are short. There are 3 days, 5 days, and 7 days.
Right.
And you do between 2 and 3 ayahuasca ceremonies when you're there. I did the 7-day because at the end they tack on a trip to Machu Picchu. So I wanted to do that anyway, so I figured, hell, why not? It's the train ticket, the hotel, the ticket up to Machu Picchu. The whole deal is included in it.
Right.
It's a little pricey for the week. I think it was $1,300 US but that included the trip to Machu Picchu, all the accommodations.
Yeah, that's not bad.
If
you're staying a week in Hawaii, you're gonna pay
exactly.
a lot
Yeah.
more than $1,300.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's true. But yeah, so the thing that's really uncommon is they have an RN on site.
Right.
So before the ceremonies, the RN checks your blood pressure, checks your vitals. So it's traditional. And like I said, we'll talk about that, but it's also, they're very grounded there, and they're there to make sure people are okay.
Right.
And they're there to make sure that you're safe throughout the ceremony. And
it probably gives the people that are there, the participants, a little bit of
peace of mind.
Peace of mind.
Yeah.
Okay, there's somebody here. If there's a medical issue.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm dying. They're gonna make sure that that's not the case.
Yeah, exactly. And I will tell you, I don't think Agnica's they have had to take people. I asked this question. They in the past, have they ever had to take anybody to the hospital? They have, but not because of. So people have died from trying ayahuasca. Usually, though, it's from the sketch stuff. People who are just doing it on their own, people who are doing it with unscrupulous souls. So there was this place in Cusco the first night I got there, and Cusco's an ancient city. It's a colonial city, but it's a blend of the Spanish but also the Inca infrastructure that was there. And I was walking along looking for a restaurant, and just the sliver of a hole in the wall, and there's a tiny little sign that said ayahuasca ceremony. stay the fuck away. Stay the fuck away from that, because that's where you run into problems.
Yeah.
I don't know this place for sure. Maybe it was okay for most people, but I'm willing to bet even money it's places like that, or when you do it on your own for recreation and you don't have respect for the substance, that's where you run into problems.
Right.
So, from what I understood, and I mean, Etnika's has been there for 10 years-ish. Nobody's ever died at Etnika's. They've had to take some people to the hospital, but not because of the ayahuasca. It's just sort of the other effects that people have.
Yeah.
Some people fall. Sometimes they try and look out for you, obviously, but sometimes accidents happen. So nobody's ever died from going to Etnika's, and nobody ever got hurt on I had several groups while I was there, because I was on a 7-day, and most people were only there for 3. Nobody was injured. Nobody got hurt. Everybody was physically and at the end emotionally and seemed spiritually fine. So,
a place couldn't stick around for 10 years.
Exactly.
People are getting regularly having to go to the hospital.
And I'll tell you, at Nika's, they got a certificate of excellence from TripAdvisor. They have been recommended. They're similar, like TripAdvisor for ayahuasca locations.
Right.
They have gotten certification from that. Very highly rated. So I would if you're looking at doing an ayahuasca and it's your ceremony and it's your first time out of the gate, Etnika. So their website is, what is it? Etnika.com. You can just look at ETNIKA''S. You just Google them, they'll come up. I highly recommend. Highly. Because like I said, for most of the people that come through the door there, they have very little to no experience with ayahuasca, and it's a wonderful place for you to get introduced to the medicine.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's back up. We've talked about the retreat site itself and a little bit about what's going to happen there, but let's back up to Cusco and volcanic water.
Yeah.
Is where we need to start, right?
Yeah. So ayahuasca is known as the purge in the Amazon, and we'll tell you why in a second. But prior to the ceremony, one of the things that they do is they want you to be in a clean state. So they have certain restrictions at the retreat center, dietary.
Right.
So, for instance, no red meat 2 days before. They recommend no alcohol 2 days before. I essentially cut alcohol. The last alcoholic beverage I had, I was aiming to be alcohol-free for a month before. The last alcoholic beverage I had was a week before I went. So cut out alcohol, cut out red meat, try and stick to fish or just vegetarian if you can do it.
Right.
Before. No smoking. If you can cut out any medication that you're on safely, they want you to do that. No coffee, no chocolate. And this is all 2 days
So
before.
basically, like, caffeine is out.
Yeah.
Alcohol is out.
Yeah. No masturbation 2 days before. No sexual intercourse 2 days before, because they want they
want you to have that energy.
Exactly, yeah, because it diminishes, doing that diminishes sort of your interior energy.
Right.
So it's a shortened period of chastity that you go through.
That's not bad. A couple of days.
It's actually a good thing. It's actually a good thing. So, and then, so there's different, so they ask you to do different things. So, but the day before the retreat starts, so they do the purging with the volcanic water. So what they do is they tell you to meet in San Francisco Plaza in Cusco at 10 in the morning the day before the retreat. So you meet there, there's a nurse there, there's a coordinator there, and they take you, there's different places. We went to a hostel, actually, that they sort of have an arrangement with.
Right.
And they bring it in this volcanic, so what it is, it's a mineral water.
Right.
It's essentially is what it is, from a volcano.
From a volcano.
And they bring it in this, it's like a gas can almost. And it's full of this mineral water, and they give you these, just regular plastic cups. And they say, okay, this is what's going to happen. So you need to clean your... It's kind of like going for a colonoscopy.
Yeah, this is what I understand. You're going to shit a lot.
Yeah, so, yeah, basically. And it's different. The amount of mineral water you have to drink is different from person to person.
Right.
So, I drank 11 cups of it. Oh, right. So the first 5
That's
cups...
a lot of water. You're gonna have problems if you drink just straight water out of the tap. 11 cups.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So this had the minerals in it. So I think there was some sort of refresh for the system.
Right.
So the first 5 cups, and everybody has to drink at least the first 5 cups. You chug.
Yeah.
You chug it. You take it. You chug that down as fast as you can. And
that's hard to do. I've seen guys in the military when we'd had to hydrate and guys try to just drink one canteen. They're throwing it up. You know.
Yeah, and they say don't throw it up if you can avoid throwing it up, and it tastes awful. It's like drinking. It was almost like drinking a. You've tasted seawater.
Yeah.
It was almost like tasting a cut, like a diluted seawater, is what it is. And towards the end, there's floaties from the minerals in there. And that's at the point at my 11th cup, I started getting floaties. I said, I'm done. Like I'm done with drinking this because I am not drinking this floaty. Make sure you get your shots, everybody. I had my typhoid before I went. So,
right.
So I did my first 5 cups. I got to my 6th, and what it does is it cleans you out. So you're located close to the bathroom. I think I went to the bathroom no less than 8 times in 2 hours. And basically the idea is, so they want to clean out your colon and your blood as well. And let's just put it all on the table here so that you shit your guts out.
Right.
For 2 hours, to the point where when you're passing, the idea is it should be as clear as water. By the time, so that's when you know you are fully, your body, your bowels, and everything have been fully cleansed. It is supposed to be as clear as water. That's what they tell you.
Wow.
I didn't quite get to that level.
Yeah.
I got close enough, though. So, it was, so that's what, and so it's because people, you accumulate, especially in, this sort of Western McDonald's and Coca-Cola and booze everywhere and God knows whatever, your body accumulates all these toxins, all these chemicals, and so the idea is to be as free of that as possible. So for 2 hours I shat my guts out, felt really good afterwards, felt really clean, and then it was a pure vegetarian diet for me after that.
Right.
So of course the nurse takes your vitals before you start and after you start and whatever, and you're just visiting with people around while you're waiting for your next time to go to the bathroom. And it was all co-ed bathrooms, so right out of the gate you get to know everybody really, really well. Man, woman, doesn't matter. You're all shitting together. So that's it's a communal experience. And actually, it serves to actually create that, because at the retreat center they called us family. Okay, family.
You mean co-ed in the sense that this is a communal bathroom?
Yeah.
There's several
stalls, and there's men, there's women, there's whatever. And
are they like military style latrine open stall?
No. It was the hostel one, so that's what we used.
Yeah, I remember one time I was in the military. I was on a range.
Yeah.
I went into one of these long latrines.
Yeah.
I had the shit, and I sat down in one of the in one of the holes.
Yeah.
And I was doing my thing. This guy came in. He had all the other stalls he could have used. He sat right next to me.
Yeah.
That's like uncomfortable familiar.
When I did that in the military, no word of a lie. My first basic training round that I went through in Gagetown, it was co-ed bathrooms. We were on a barracks, so why the hell it needed to be co-ed, nobody really understood. But it was co-ed. I'm there taking a shit. And there we had this girl, we called her G.I. Jane because the movie had just come out, and she was a nurse. She was an army nurse forever. Built like a brick shit house. Like this, she was a fit, and she decided she wanted to go infantry. She had enough of nursing, and she wanted to go get some. She's doing fucking chin-ups while I'm having a shit on the bathroom stall. She's doing chin-ups. How's it going? Great, thanks. Are you having a good time watching me have a shit while you do chin-ups? So that was, it was a bizarre experience. Yeah, Katie was pretty good about it. She, we got over the hurdle of getting to know each other pretty damn quick. So,
right.
And like I said, at the retreat center, once we got there, they said, okay, family, we're going to go do this now. Okay, family, we're going to go do this now. Because you were a cohort, basically,
right.
Which was a beautiful thing to go through. Being there, I was scared to death to go on my own because I didn't know anybody and I didn't know what was going to happen and whatever. So that was a beautiful thing to have that cohort there.
Right.
And the staff was great. So so you eat supper that night, lunch and supper, and then you are on a fast for 36 hours.
36. Okay. So you drink the volcanic water.
Yeah.
Then you get lunch and supper. Yeah. Purely vegetarian.
Purely vegetarian.
And after supper, 36 hours.
Yeah, 36 hours of nothing. So the next day we arrive at they pick us up from the square. And they take us to, it's an hour-long trip to the retreat center. So we're all starving because we haven't eaten till the night. We didn't eat breakfast, anything. We get to the retreat center. We put our stuff, they assign us our rooms.
Right.
So we put our stuff in the rooms. And then there's an orientation they give you. So they show you around the different place. Oh, by the way, the one thing about the retreat center, at least right now anyway, and I think they're looking at changing this just because... it's what's called noble silence, or what we used to call in the seminary grand silence, where the idea is you don't talk. Oh, it's a silent retreat. Right. That lasted a day. So that lasted a day, and it's difficult when you're going to go through this experience to maintain that interior silence. So we arrive at the retreat center, and we do the orientation. They show us around. They introduce us to the coordinator. We get introduced to the two shamans. So this is where we'll talk about, I guess, the two shamans. So there's two different types of shamans that are at this particular retreat center. One is the Shipibo shaman, and they have different shamans that come in, the maestros that come in from these two communities. The first one when I was there was Master Jesus, and he was pretty good. Definitely qualified, I would say, to do what he was doing. But later on I met Master Pablo, and Master Pablo, who was the Shipibo that sort of, as Master Jesus was leaving, Master Pablo was coming in. He reminded me of my karate teacher. He was Master Pablo was the guru type, and I'll talk a little bit more about him.
Right.
40 years of experience working with ayahuasca from the jungle. So you get, and then the other type of shaman is the I want to say Quiche, but that's the Mayan. The other is the Keros or Quechuan shaman. And they are the shamans. So the Shipibo are from the Amazon.
Right.
The Quiche are from the highlands, from the Andes Mountains.
Okay.
And the maestro that was there, the Keros that was there for my entire time, was Maestro Nicholas, who was an old guy, gentle soul. He came from a community that was from way higher than Cusco even, really? Like I think about 500 meters higher than Cusco, undiscovered by the Spanish. When the conquistadors came over Peru and conquered the lands and treated everybody, killed people off, treated people like shit, this community was isolated because it was so high up the Spaniards never got there. And so the tradition is pure.
Wow.
From his community, and it was passed down through his family and from the others, and the ceremonies. So their job isn't to do the ayahuasca ceremonies. The Shipibo's job is to guide you through the ayahuasca ceremonies.
Okay.
The Keros is to guide you through the ceremonies before.
Oh yeah.
And the ceremonies afterwards.
Okay, so in the highlands they didn't have the ayahuasca.
The ayahuasca is not there. That's the jungle medicine.
Okay.
They used plants for
Right.
different things,
Right.
but not in the night. They didn't have the ayahuasca there.
Right. So, was there any relationship between these high and lowland shaman pre-conquest?
I'm assuming there would have been because they were all part of the Inca Empire. So they must have. So we call it the Inca Empire. There was actually, the way it was described to me is actually there was only ever one Inca. Inca means king.
Right.
And so the one Inca was the king, and everybody else was the Quechuan. That was, and it was an empire, so it was
Right.
composed of different ethnic groups.
Right.
People that they had conquered over time, like they conquered people. It was kind of like Rome, because when the Spanish came, they were like, "You're conquered. Oh, and by the way, you're now Christians, and if you're not Christians, we're taking you out."
Right.
Whereas the Inca Empire was like, "Okay, you're now conquered," and the people would say, "Well, what about our spirits in the mountains?" That's okay. You
Right.
can keep celebrating, your spirituality, So very much like Rome in that way, because Rome was that way. Rome was they were spiritually wise, they were pretty tolerant. They, they kind of looked down on other people, but
Right.
they still let you practice as long as you sort of conform to the legal forms of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
You could basically do what you wanted in terms of spiritual practice. Well, that was very much the Inca way as well. They were an empire. They
Right.
conquered people. So there must have been some knowledge of
Yeah.
each other, but I mean, I don't know that there was necessarily a lot of interaction.
Yeah, knowledge of each other, but there wasn't like this whole thing with the retreat is kind of a new synthesis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
of-
It's syncretic. There's
Yeah,
no other way to put it.
Right.
It's not only syncretic in terms of the different traditions that made up the Inca Empire, but also syncretic in terms of bringing in Christian elements. Also syncretic in terms of bringing in Buddhist elements.
Right.
So it is really, Etnikas is really a syncretic tradition. Like even the Shipibo, that both of them
Come from the Amazon. Yeah.
Well, they come from who come from the Amazon. Like they some of the prayers were in Spanish. They were referencing the Holy Spirit,
Oh yeah.
even in some of their prayers, because they've blended that traditional spirituality with the notion of the Christian notion of the Holy Spirit of God.
Right.
So they've come to a really comfortable blend with it, that they go back and forth between the two spiritual traditions like it's
Right.
nothing, right? Like it's there's no barrier in between where you have to be this or you have to be that. No,
Right.
it flows in and out, and it's beautiful. I loved it.
Yeah.
To answer your question, I don't know. I think they may have known of each other. I don't know that they really had a lot of interaction with it.
Right.
Yeah. So, so the Shipibo maestros were responsible for the ayahuasca. So I guess talking about the first day. So after the orientation, some of the first things. So mine was a little bit different than what other people did, just because I paid more. If you pay for the 7-day retreat, you get more out of it, right?
Right.
I got more yoga, so they do yoga at the retreat. I got walks in the hills around, like in the Sacred Valley around.
Right.
But everybody, after the initial group meeting and the introduction to the shamans, the Shipibo shaman takes off, and the Keros shaman stays, and they go through. So it's an opening ceremony, prayer, unification of energies done with coca leaves.
Yeah.
And so there's 3 coca leaves, and there's different significance, and I don't remember all the significance. There was a lot to process.
Yeah, I think I read something about reading coca leaves. and
Well,
stuff,
that
too.
was part of mine, but this was something different to start, where the coca leaves. So it's to unify the energies of the group and to prepare you and to for it, and you chew the coca leaves and both Shipibo, I should say both Shipibo and the Keros.
Mm.
So there's a great devotion to Pachamama, which is
The
Mother
Earth
Earth Mother, yeah. So Mother Nature, and that permeates throughout the retreat. And the Apos, which are the spirits, so the spirit of the mountains. So part of this initial ceremony was asking permission to celebrate the ceremony and to proceed with the ayahuasca.
Right.
So from Pachamama, you don't ask. You just receive whatever Pachamama, Mother Nature, has to give you.
Right.
That's the tradition. But the apos, you ask permission to be here, to do these ceremonies. So it's very right out of the gate. Right out of the gate, this is a spiritual ceremonial tradition.
Right. So the apos, when we're talking about spirits, are we talking about? I think you mentioned the mountains and this.
The streams, the trees,
the
animals, everything.
Okay. So
everything has
all the
an
living
apos.
beings. In there.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. The rocks.
Right.
Yeah. Everything has the apos. Right. The spirit, the weather.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay.
The initial ceremony is asking permission. Then they do a disclosure, a personal disclosure. So they ask you about why you're there, what your intentions are.
So each person does this.
Each person, yeah. Okay. Who are you?
And this is a group thing?
No, you do it individually.
Okay.
So I was a little hesitant to share all the aspects of this. So they ask you about your relationships, they ask you about your work, they ask you about family, they ask you about all these different things. Mine was combined with, I had the coca leaf ceremony. So they use coca leaves as a divinatory thing. So like people use tarot, or people like use chicken entrails, or whatever. It's a divining. So they would ask him, he whipped the coca leaves around and into he'd read the patterns of the coca leaves to see what came up, what was blocked, what was flowing good. Apparently I'm supposed to be rich. Down the road, I'm supposed to, not only him, but the Shibibo shaman after my first sharing, after the first ayahuasca ceremony. Apparently I'm supposed to be good in business. Apparently I'm supposed to excel in a few years in some project.
Right.
Well, maybe it's the podcast. Who knows? Who knows what it is down the road. Anyway, so they define different things with the coca leaf ceremony. That's what it is.
Right.
Not everybody did the coca leaf, but everybody did the disclosure.
And the disclosure is to the shaman.
The shaman and the retreat coordinator.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're available to, it's kind of like your priest. They're there to talk to whenever you have a question, whenever you have something you want to talk about, something that may have come out of a ceremony, out of the ayahuasca session. They're there to talk with you.
Right.
After doing that, there's a cleansing ceremony. So they use plants, but they use different kinds of plants. So you go to a place in the back, there's a garden in the back, and it's kind of like a smudging almost in a way, where they cleanse you with the plants. There's a blessing over you, and then they move you from that spot where you've been cleansed over to a place where you do. It's almost like setting your intention for the retreat. So it's asking to receive. Forgiveness is a huge piece. Not only forgiveness of yourself, but forgiveness of others. And after the cleansing ceremony, where they get all the energies off of you that are negative, and to cleanse you before you start. Right. Then you go over, you set your intention, you ask for forgiveness, you ask to be able to forgive yourself and to be able to forgive others, and you ask forgiveness of yourself. So that's the Keros shaman that does all these, and there's different plants involved. And
so the forgiveness, do you think that this is part of the that strikes me as something that might be part of the Christian influence into the
could be could be. I don't know. It was difficult to tell where the traditional spirituality ended and where the Christian. I mean, some of it I could tell,
right?
Because obviously when they're talking about Pachamama, they use the Virgin Mary as an icon of Pachamama,
right?
Like it's
right.
in and out, and it's not like the theologian inside of me. When I was in the seminary, I went, "Oh, what are you talking about?" I mean, I'm in a totally different spiritual place now than I was then, so I can appreciate the beauty of being able to move in and out of the spiritual traditions.
Right.
But a lot of people who are listening to this who may belong to Christian tradition would be offended by that. If you are offended by that, stay the fuck away from A, the ayahuasca, and B, from the retreat center, right. Because you're going to want to leave the place because it's heresy or whatever. You can't be in that space and go in there because, like I said, sometimes you cannot tell where the traditional spirituality starts and where some of the Christian or even Buddhist or Buddhist, Hindu, for
Right.
God's sakes. You can't tell where one starts and the other begins. So you could be right. That could be an influence of the Christian. I don't know.
Well,
maybe
I guess my question was just to feel, whether you got a sense of that it was or not, because it's a curious aspect to me, because I don't see a lot, like, you get the Catholic confession.
Yeah.
And the idea of a person having sins and such in the whole Christian tradition.
Yeah.
That I don't see, like, here in Indigenous tradition. So I wondered about down there. It might be different.
Might be. Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. I don't know.
There was no indication either.
But a lot of it was just setting intention.
Right.
Putting yourself right to prepare yourself to make sure that you're ready for the ceremony.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then after the ceremony, nothing. You sit.
After the forgiveness and
You're sort of dismissed for the day. You do your own preparation. Because the first night you're there is the first night you're in the ayahuasca ceremony.
Uh-huh.
There is no gap.
Right.
You're right out of the gate. Off you go. So I was nervous going into it.
I'm sure everybody is.
Everybody is. Unknown. Some of the people weren't as nervous. One of the guys actually had done pure DMT a couple of times before coming.
Injected.
Or smoked. Yeah, you can smoke it too, apparently.
Oh, okay.
So he had some experience, and actually I was the only one that didn't really have any experience of any substance. One acid, one this, that, the other thing. I was really the only one that had certainly no psychedelic experience coming in. The others had pretty well all, tried mushrooms or different things, but I had none. So they're all kind of laughing at me like, "Oh, you're jumping in. You're jumping in with both feet, man." Yeah. So
it's the deep end of the pool.
Yeah.
You haven't even swam yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So so they held it in the main hall. They do have a separate facility, like if it's a big group, they do have a separate area, it's like a hut.
Right.
Where they'll do the ceremony, but they decided, because we were a bit of a smaller group, we were going to just do it in the main hall where we did, the initial prayer with the coca leaves and the orientation and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
So what they do is they, so at about 7 o'clock, the nurse arrives, and they start to get ready. So they set it up in the main hall, sort of at the front. They put a bunch of cushions in that, which is where the maestro will sit, and the coordinators and the nurse and that, and then sort of in a semicircle around them. So they lay out they lay out a mat, because it's a hard floor. So they lay out a mat, they lay out a sleeping bag and a couple of blankets, and right beside you, about a 2-gallon pail.
Yeah, I know where that was going.
Right. One of the things that they ask you to bring is for each ayahuasca ceremony a 2-liter bottle of water. And they ask you to bring a roll of toilet paper, which I thought was because they thought you're going to shit yourself, but that's not actually what it's for. It's for cleaning your mouth, and we'll talk about that. You walk into the room, and I've seen pictures of other settings before for Iowa, so I wasn't particularly surprised by what I saw in the room. It was pretty typical as to some of the other pictures that I saw.
Is there any symbolic layout to how the seating is arranged?
I don't know. I don't think so. They did kind of move. Oh, you should sit over here. My second ayahuasca ceremony, they put me in a particular place, but there's a reason behind that. It was more logistical, I think, for some other. There is a sense that people that are close together, if one's having a really negative experience, that transfer. When we talk about the actual ceremony,
right.
If you're not into the mystical, if you're not into the spiritual, you're going to just dismiss it and be out of it. But you have to remember, if you go into this with just a purely rational, logical, scientific, materialist perspective, you are going to get next to nothing out of this conversation, nor out of the ayahuasca.
Right.
Or that being said, if you do come into it with this materialistic, scientific perspective, you may very well not leave with that perspective when you're done the ayahuasca.
Right.
But anyway, so if there are two people next to each other that one is having a negative experience, more often than not, the people around them are having a negative experience.
Right.
So it's like your consciousness is transferring between the two people.
Yeah.
Wiggy. But I had some experiences that basically said to me, no, Aaron, there's actually something to this. So you get into the room. I just picked a spot. Nobody said anything. Everybody just kind of picked a spot. And from there, basically, so you start off with, so they give you an explanation. Actually, they start off with the next day's itinerary. Tomorrow morning, you'll have breakfast, and we're gonna have then we'll have a sharing, because you share after each ayahuasca session,
Right.
about your experiences. And then there's yoga, and then there's this, and then there's that, and okay, now we're gonna start to get ready for the ayahuasca session. So again, totally set and setting. Graham Hancock would be proud. I'm pretty sure of this facility. Even because it's not in the jungle, but they do the best they can with where they're at, and
Right.
they really bring an aspect of ceremony and spirituality to this. So the first thing they do is they bring out the ayahuasca, and the shaman in the Coke bottle,
Right.
the shaman kisses it, speaks to it, says a prayer over it. They lay out the different pieces. They light the tobacco. They have and the different elements that are used to prepare yourself before drinking the ayahuasca. So you begin with a purification of earth and water. So the shaman, in 2 bowls, they pass it around, or they bring around. So you take a piece of earth in your hand, and you dip your fingers in water, and you mix it in your hand.
Right.
And you spread it from your head down over your face, over your body, and it's a protective mechanism. The protection of earth and the protection of water.
Right.
So that you're not unduly influenced by evil spirits, negative energies, that sort of thing. After you're done that, then the famous agua florida, which is flower water. So it's water, and I think they tried to use different flowers or different substances. I saw them drinking it, so clearly it can't be a poisonous thing.
Right.
Some places I've heard that the shaman will actually drink it and then spit it at you. They didn't do this at the retreat, but they do bring the agua florida. Again, you receive the agua florida, so it's semi-sacred at least.
Right.
You put it in your hands, and it's beautiful. It's like an incense. It's like a liquid incense.
Right.
And you rub your hand, and again, you spread it over your body, your face, and again, it's a protective mechanism to protect you from negative energies and spirits. Then what they do is so the shaman will look at you, and with the retreat coordinator will sort of coordinate, and the shaman will make a determination. So that
They don't ask you half a cup or a full cup.
You know what?
Or...
Not the first night they did not.
Right.
It was
the
assigned
shaman
to us.
decides what you're going to get.
Yeah, and so I will say, I guess to be honest about the experience, and to be honest, there are different techniques with the different shibibo. I did experience some politics. Politics is everywhere.
Right.
The first shaman I had was he was good. I felt comfortable, knowledgeable about what he was doing. Not as experienced as some of the others. A little more hands-off, unfortunately. And he just gave you what he gave you. So so they had little plastic. It wasn't red solo cups. It was white solo cups. Again, made me chuckle a little.
We're used to the material
coming
culture
from the material
of
culture.
religion.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and the retreat coordinator would say, "Okay, this is for Aaron, or this is for Paul, or this is for Katie, or this is for Elias," and would pour, and he poured. My first time out of the gate, it was 2/3 full of a white solo cup. So if you know what a red solo cup looks like, if you don't, check out the song by Toby Keith. It's a great song. And it's 2/3 full.
Right, which is probably a full liquid cup, like in terms of measurements.
And
right?
for first times out of the gate, the second shaman that I had was not impressed. Let's just put it that way. that especially my first time out of the gate, because I had no psychedelic, and you disclose. By the way, part of the disclosure going in is how much have you done weed, how much have you done cocaine, how much have you done acid, whatever.
Right.
Especially for me, first time out of the gate, the shaman that came in afterwards, Master Pablo, was not impressed. Because I had essentially what amounted to a full cup of ayahuasca on my first night.
Dove in the deep end.
And I dove in the deep end right out of, and I didn't even think about it.
Right.
I didn't even think about it. So they issue out the ayahuasca, and then you make your intention.
By the way.
Yeah.
How many people are in here with you?
So there were four of us doing the ceremony.
Okay.
And there were 4 people, the 2 coordinators, the nurse, and the maestro.
Okay, so 8 people.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then we had. So then you have your cup, you hold it, and they say, okay, now you indicate your intention. Now, I made a mistake my first time out. I set an intention internally, so I thought about it, and I thought about what my intention was going to be, which was to be basically, how do I remove the blockages in my life and reach my full potential and grow spiritually? So it was fairly vague.
Right.
What I didn't realize was, and the maestro didn't articulate this very well for my first night, is that you're supposed to speak to the ayahuasca.
Oh, I see.
Because if you don't speak to the ayahuasca, so you say, this is my intention, ayahuasca, Mother Ayahuasca, this is what I'm hoping to come out of.
Right.
If you don't do that, apparently, Mother Ayahuasca is just going to take you where she will.
Yeah, well, it's like anybody else, right? So if I come here and I just
Yeah.
look at you and I have an intention, you're not going to know what the heck's going on.
Exactly.
In my head, right?
So you speak to Mother Ayahuasca. You speak to the plant. You verbalize. You don't have to like shout,
Right.
but you whisper to Mother.
Right.
This is what I'm hoping to get, Mother Ayahuasca. I didn't do that. I just thought about it. I focused my consciousness. I focused my intention,
Right.
but I didn't actually verbalize it. And then they say, okay, when you're ready, drink. Try not to throw it up, because if you do, you just have to take more. I'll explain why.
Yeah.
How are we doing for time? Well, we got some time. How are you doing for time?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you take the cup, and it took me 2 minutes to build up the courage to drink it. So I expressed my intention, and I downed her. The whole cup.
Right. And there's
and
no
then-
coming back from that.
And there was, well, you could throw it up
right
away. You could throw it up right away, and it's not going to really have an effect on you. But I did not. And then what you do basically is they say, okay, now after you've downed it, you have the water next to you. You brought your 2-liter bottle of water.
Right.
Just have a little bit of water, swish out your mouth, just to get the taste. Maybe gargle a little bit,
Right.
and spit it into the bucket. So again, right out of the gate, we're all family here.
Right.
So I did, and the taste, like I said, I can kind of taste a little bit. It's not, like I said, it's not the worst thing I've ever had in my life. And after chugging 11 glasses of that volcanic mineral water, I'd take the ayahuasca.
Yeah. Well, you're not there to have a tasty cocktail.
Exactly, yeah. So I swished my mouth, spit it into the bucket, and then basically you wait. In the meantime, while you're waiting, the maestro, so they use a pure tobacco.
Right.
That comes from the jungle, and they use it in a cigarette format. They've rolled it,
Right.
and again, that's another protective mechanism, but also is meant to enhance the vision. So they would blow the tobacco on you, usually as you're getting a little bit close for the medicine to take effect. So the medicine itself, you have to ingest, and you have to let it sit, and it's almost Swiss watch precision as to what happens. It's a little bit different in terms of timing for
Right.
individuals. But the effect is essentially the same, especially if you're all having a larger dose of it. So you sit there and you wait, and half an hour goes by, and by now he's blowing the tobacco smoke, and they blow the tobacco smoke on you throughout the ceremony too, especially if you're having a difficult time and that's manifesting itself.
Right.
They will blow the tobacco smoke on you. After about 40 minutes, 30 minutes, they start coming around. How are you feeling?
Mm.
So the first effects of the ayahuasca is you start to get dizzy because it has to be absorbed into the stomach.
Right.
And from the stomach, then it goes into the bloodstream and it starts to go to different parts of the body. About a half an hour in, I did start to notice a little bit of cold sensation starting to happen. And then about 40 minutes in, they, like I said, they come around, they ask you, how are you feeling? Are you dizzy? Are you nauseous? If the answer to that is, I'm starting to feel dizzy, or I'm starting to feel nauseous, like you really start to feel it when it happens, they say, okay, time to drink your water. So you start and you chug. You have to try and chug the water. So you chug the water as much as you can, which is then followed by into the bucket.
Vomiting, yeah.
Your first vomit, you're now leaving the starting gate.
Right.
Because almost immediately, certainly for me, and it could be a little bit different for, it is now in your system. The ayahuasca, the DMT is now starting to work through your system. And we're now off to the races after your first vomit. I vomited a lot. I feel the pale. My first night. In the 5 hours during the ayahuasca, you will vomit.
Right.
This is not stuff to fuck around with.
Yeah.
Ayahuasca is a serious medicine. It is a medicine.
Right.
And if you go in with recreational intent, either A, nothing's going to happen to you, or you're about to get tossed around like nothing. You will vomit. One guy shit his pants. I'm not going to say who. Yeah. It happens.
So I've heard that happens. I heard it comes out both ends.
It did not come out both ends for me. It was vomit only.
Right.
Probably because I shit my guts out the day before and I hadn't eaten anything. But you chug the water because you have to have something in your stomach to vomit out. Because what happens is the ayahuasca comes out with it.
Right.
So, and you have to get it out of your system. You have to get it out of your system. So I vomited a lot. So I vomited probably for 20 minutes. Chugging water. All night long I chugged, I think I calculated out to 5 to 6 liters of water. It was a bad night for vomiting. Some people, you'd vomit once and that's going to be it.
Yeah.
Or you vomit 2 or 3 times, that's going to be it. You got it out of your system, you have no other this is also part of the cleanse, right? So you're essentially cleansing the toxins for how many years, whatever you've been eating, whatever you've been taking into your cigarette smoking, whatever, you're cleansing it out of your body. The ayahuasca is working to not only, vision, consciously, but physically. It is a physical purge.
Right.
So I vomited a lot. I had a lot of stuff in me. I had a lot of stuff. And it's not separate. It's consciousness cleanse, it's physical cleanse.
Right.
It's both. And if you have stuff in your consciousness, that isn't necessarily just going to result in visions. Your consciousness is going to come through your vomit, and you're going to cleanse out whatever the hell is going on inside you into this bucket. Like, there's no demarcation with this.
Right.
What is going on in your mind, what is going in your body.
Yeah.
It is united.
Right.
It is united. And you're throwing up the whatever the fuck is going on with you, physically or emotionally or mentally, consciously, whatever.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, actually. Yeah.
So after 10 minutes or so, 20 minutes of vomiting, okay, I'm ready to lay down. It has now taken full effect. I'm dizzy. I'm not as nauseous as I was. The cold sensation has now taken over my body. I feel a tingling sensation in my chest, which I'm worried about because I have a heart thing. Or I've had a heart thing. By the way, I'm checking my pulse the whole time through because I'm like, what the fuck? How's my heart doing? Steady rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. No problems. No problems. I'm like, okay, I'm okay. My first night I didn't have a lot in the way of visions, but I did, that was the first thing that came to me. And I had in a lot of ways, what is a prototypical vision of ayahuasca. So there are certain colors. I'm looking at I have a medicine, I bought a medicine pouch and it was blessed by the shaman. So these colors, vibrant yellow, pink, blue, white, red. And they were sort of swirling and they were spotted.
Right.
In between the colors swimming through was the snake.
Oh yeah.
Which is a prototypical symbol of Mother Ayahuasca.
Right.
The serpent.
Yeah, I've heard about this dragons and these kind of things.
Well, I saw dragons the second night, but the
Okay.
snake was very different. But the snake was my first vision, and I knew then Mother Ayahuasca was present. the visions had started, the spirits were present. The visions didn't last long, and I was struggling a lot because I'm going to say it right out, I do not like the sensation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the sensation. Part of it is because I'm a little bit of a control freak in terms of
being out of control.
It's being out of control. You have no control. You have no control. You can come out of it.
Yeah.
And you can feel normal, but then you sink back into it.
Yeah.
And I didn't like being. There were moments where I went completely limp
right.
during the first session. So the visions were the first thing, and it didn't last long. Then I move into me. And there were different things that came up, things that which I'm not going to talk about on here so much. Things in my life, regrets, traumas, things that I have done. And Graham Hancock, you ever want to hear about it from somebody else to validate the experience, Mother Ayahuasca takes no hostages, and she will show you precisely who you are, how you've been to other people. She will show you the traumas of your life, or at least give you good indications of what the traumas of your life are. If you're addicted to something, she will show you that. So let's just say okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'll lay it out. I have a sex addiction.
Right.
It's something that's part of my life. Mother Ayahuasca showed me a root trauma from when I was very, very, very young. I didn't know even after having that trauma, I don't know what that trauma is. There is something in my past that is somewhat hidden. I don't know what it is. It's there.
Right.
And the message that I got actually was fairly clear, because I kept grabbing my junk once that part of the life review,
right.
which is not common, by the way. That's just something in relation to me, and maybe it's TMI, but you know what? Let's be honest about what's going on.
Okay.
Because I got, after the visions, there was something else, and I have to look back at my journal because I wrote it down, but I don't remember what it is right now.
It's a good idea to write things down.
I extensively journaled after each of my ayahuasca. So after the visions, I had this glowing sensation in my genitals, like just this whoo, pulsating, and it was like my hand was a magnet. I just wanted, And then it took me in a vision to show me there was something from when I was young that has led to this particular trauma. Whether it was sexual trauma, I don't know. Might have been something else, but it just manifested in that way for me. The message that I got from Mother Ayahuasca was, Aaron, it's, you know what, you're too far gone. This is just something that is now part of you.
Right.
And it's okay.
Right.
It's okay. You can live with this. You can work with this. You're okay. But it's just something you need to be. It's a question almost that I've had for a lot of my adult life, and Mother Ayahuasca says, "Don't worry, Aaron. It's okay. It's just part of you. It's something you're just gonna have.
Right.
You're just gonna work with." Then it led me to something else entirely. So there was a closure that came immediately for that piece. There was a couple of other things that came up. I didn't cry. I could have cried. I felt like crying, but I didn't. I don't think. Tears are normal because you see things. You see how you've acted. You see how different things have occurred.
Right.
And then, Brian, I lived my death.
Okay, so this is interesting because so I had an experience on Liberty Bell mushrooms, which are wild mushrooms in Oregon, that I think I'll be able to relate a little bit to this. But I mean, just you're talking about visions of things that happen in your life. You know, the last experience I had on Liberty Bells when I stopped doing psychedelics after that. Not that I would never do them again, but that was an intense enough experience for me for a while.
Yeah.
Included kind of a death, the feeling I was dead, and if not dead, paralyzed.
Right.
Paralyzed, and then I go into a past life experience. Then I come back to myself, and I was still paralyzed.
Right.
And dead in bed, basically. Yeah. Then go back to a past life experience, then come back and I was paralyzed. And this went on for a long time. Yeah.
Was it because you were fighting it? Or was it just...
I think it was because of the context, yeah, I think it had turned into down a road where emotionally I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
My brother and I had gone out into the forest to do this, and then he had to go home, and then I went, and this was after I was left home and everything like this, but I was back staying with my parents on a kind of a visit.
Right.
Then my brother went out and I went out and did this. Then I came back to my parents' house, and I think just the context of wow, I've still got like hours of this that I'm dealing with alone now, that nobody can know about, and I've got to just isolate myself in this room and go through this. I think part of that, like the stress of the situation, because I'd never had an experience where I started to feel that like I'd heard about other people having it, like they feel like they think they're gonna die, or they experience something like a death.
Yeah.
Never had that before with any of the previous experiences, but in this case, that's where it went. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and I had my experience too. So as soon as I was done sort of the review of my traumas and the things that I experienced, then that's when I moved to the death experience. I had gotten up to go to the bathroom, and they are helping me move around, and I didn't really have to go. But this is sort of where the death experience started for me. I was actually on the floor in the bathroom because my body had gone completely limp. The death experience that I had was essentially what I translated it to in my head. And now looking back at what was going on in the room, because they had donned masks in the room because of the smell and whatever, and I didn't know that they were going to be putting on masks. I experienced my death on a hotel floor in Lima. The vision that I had was that I had had an overdose of ayahuasca, and that I'd gone into congestive heart failure, or I'd gone into a heart failure.
Right.
So that basically I was surrounded by paramedics who were basically just ready. I mean, they knew Aaron's gone. He's not coming back. And they were encouraging me, just go with the medicine, just go with the medicine. What they were actually doing during the experience was just saying, Aaron, just relax, just go with the medicine, let it take you, you're going to emerge out the other side. You're okay, Aaron, don't worry.
Right.
I thought they were lying to me throughout basically just to comfort me because I was going to die.
Right.
They didn't want me to be too excited. I thought they were paramedics around me.
Yeah,
and
it was the shaman and
it was the nurse. It was and I thought, the thoughts that went through my mind were, one of the regrets that came up was, I can't believe I'm dying and I never dealt with this.
Right.
And it adversely affected somebody I love very much. I can't believe that I'm dying on a bathroom floor in South America.
Right.
I came down here to die. I can't believe this. Just sadness.
Right.
Then I came to a spot where I was like, you know what? But if that's what's written, that's what's written. So I slipped into death. During the vision, and it didn't actually happen, like it didn't actually physically happen, but during my vision, my heart stopped. My body stopped. But I could still hear everybody. And I'm like, fuck this. And I bolt up and no! Basically, you're not burying me when I can tell what's going on. Right. That was the sensation, the vision that was going through me. You're not burying me when this is all over, when I can still hear and perceive what's going on. If I die, I die. Okay, whatever. That's life in the big city. That's just what happens. But you're not burying me, while I'm still alive, because I can hear you. I could hear the... And they were just jibber-jabbering, like, oh, he's fine, don't worry about it. I'll just prop him up because he can't lay on the floor in case he throws up. Whatever. Right. They were just doing routine things in the retreat, but at the time I was like, oh, they're whispering. Okay, is he dead yet? Okay, can we cart him off to the graveyard? Whatever, right? Yeah. So I would die, I would slip into, and I'm like, no! I can't,
Right.
Finally, after, I don't even know how long it was. For me, it seemed like 2 hours. It probably was like 10 minutes.
Right.
Finally, they carted me back to and I was still kind of going through this cycle because I was fighting it.
Right.
I was fighting it because I thought, I knew I was tripping on ayahuasca, but I didn't think that it was just part of the experience. I thought it was actually happening to me.
Yeah.
Then I died. I just died, Brian.
I finally said, well, you know what? There's nothing I can do about this. And I surrendered to the medicine. And I just slipped into darkness. The perception went away. The noise went away. And I was dead. I was dead. Imagine my surprise when I woke up back in the place where I'd started all of this. I opened my eyes and the jubilation that I felt of having risen from the dead, having been, and I didn't say this. The shaman said this later. I was reborn. I had died, and so I came back. I was still groggy. I was waving my hand in front of me, and it was like stop motion, like whoa. There was a trail of my hand in front of me, you know. Things were blurry. I was still high as hell as soon as this was going on, but with a sense of newness, with a sense of joy. The shaman, I was the last to leave, so after you're done, once you're kind of okay, and they know you're okay, like some guys walked out on their own. Like one guy, he was really experienced. He didn't have a bad night at all. He's had great visions, and he was done, and he went to bed, and he was happy as a clown. He had no problems. I went through pure hell, and one of the other people who was to my left, she went through pure hell, but just because she was throwing up a lot, not because necessarily of any visions. She kind of thought she'd died, or she really didn't like the experience, but it wasn't this vision. She wasn't in the same visionary space that I was at. By the way, before I went through the death experience, the thing that kept coming over and over in my head was, Aaron, you're done. This is the last instance of this. No more, or this is the last time. That's what it was. Yeah. This is the last time, which I took to mean this was going to be my last session of ayahuasca. Right. Later I realized that what that meant was this is the last time you're doing it with this master, because so I woke up. The master came over and baby, he said in Spanish to somebody else, I've delivered my first baby, because I expressed to him that I had died, and he said, good, you've been reborn. And then the next day in the sharing ceremony said, you have achieved basically the highest level that you can expect from an ayahuasca session, which is you have died. You died to yourself and are now reborn in a new frame. I have no idea what that means. Right. I still don't know what that means. There are certain things that I feel a little bit different now. Some of the anxieties that I've had about certain things have disappeared. Right. But I don't know, there are certain things that I had other anxieties about that I'm still working on, but something about myself is different. Yeah. Well,
they do also call it the violent death.
Right, yeah. Well, when you die, apparently that is the highest experience. He was very proud to have delivered this baby, is basically what he said. Right. Afterwards. And I was sick a couple more times in the night. The symptoms subsided over the next hour or two. The ayahuasca session that I was on was probably 4 to 5 hours. The effects lingered probably for another 2. I threw up a couple of other times. And then the next day you're a little, especially with that high of a dose, you're a little out of it, probably till about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I was famished, so I chugged breakfast, which was, quinoa porridge and bread. We had a chef staying, actually, at the retreat center. He's a chef. He's a pretty famous guy throughout Peru. So he did a lot of cooking, and amazing chef. I was supposed to do 3 ayahuasca sessions. I did 2. I was supposed to do one the following night. The 3 other companions that I had did it. I was not, after my experience.
You don't think you were ready?
I was not ready. I was resolved never to do it again. So I was just at the retreat center, journaling, trying to process the experience. The second day came and went. The other 3 had wonderful experiences. The third night, they all reported. The third night that I was there, I was initially they sort of talked me in is bad. There's no pressure, right. But they're saying, look, Aaron, this is normal. Yeah, this is a normal experience. You can do this again if you want to. Right. I had in the back of my head this is it. I know that ayahuasca can also tell you that this is it. You're not doing this anymore. You're not doing. So I was afraid I was actually going to die if I tried it again.
Right.
But that wasn't the message that came through. I was going to do it the third night. I was doing yoga, and then I had just got this fear of dread inside of me that, Aaron, you can't do this right now. You can't. You're not at a pace. Then I had a discussion with the coordinator, and she said, well, listen, there's going to be some different things tomorrow night, so why don't you talk to, there's a new shaman coming tomorrow night, why don't you talk with him? And that was Maestro Pablo. And Maestro Pablo said, listen, Aaron, basically, he said, what we'll do is, your dose was way too high the first night. You had an experience that I don't want you to come away with from the experience feeling bad. And I said, listen, I don't feel bad. I'm happy to, as awful and gut-wrenching and terrible as it was, I was happy to have had the experience because it showed me things. And it also, that death experience, as awful as it was, I knew was a healing.
Right.
And it was a healing that I needed to have. Mother Ayahuasca showed me that healing. It was a rough go, but it had to happen. And there it is. He said, but listen, what we'll do is, if you decide to drink tonight, we'll give you a tiny, minuscule amount, like not even a quarter of what I'd had the first time. He says, I promise you, you're not even going to throw up. You're not even going to throw up, not even once. He said, if you throw up, I'll leave the retreat center. And never return. He said, so you're going to have an experience tonight. And it's going to be better, and it's going to leave you on a high note as you leave the retreat, because I was leaving the retreat center the next day. So I said, I did it. I wasn't going to do it again, but I trusted him.
Wow.
And a few things came up. It was a much more positive experience. I did not throw up. Didn't have the shits. I had the visions. I had way more visions, so I saw different things. I saw the stars. I experienced walking inside it was like a buttercup or something. It was a plant. I was walking around in the plant. I saw dragons. And then after the visions, so the visions were cool in themselves. Again, I had that feeling in my chest. I don't like it. I had the nurse check my pulse because I needed to make sure I was okay. She says, Aaron, you're fine.
Yeah, you want some controls that you get to you.
Eric was, and this is where Eric showed his true colors in terms of, I think, where he has a vocation to be a maestro. And one of the things is, it goes through ayahuasca, is the singing of the maestro, which is an important part of the experience because, as I learned the second night, the first night he sang a little bit, but really there was no, it's called an Icarus, and there was no singing the first night. So actually, sorry listeners, I have to split this into two, so just give me a second here, and we'll come at you with part two. Sorry about that, everyone. So the second session, like I said, I had some visions. After the visions, though, actually, I didn't, I kind of got into a space where, so my intention for the second ceremony was actually just sort of a mantra. It was love, happiness, and peace. Love, happiness, and peace. And so that came up after the visions, where I got to a place where I was like, okay, so let's expose some of the things, some of the troubles that I have to Mother Ayahuasca. So like almost like holding them in my hand and say, okay, Mother Ayahuasca, this is them.
Right.
Have a look at them. Help me cleanse this. And then the feeling Mother Ayahuasca was looking at them and then working on them. And then a sense of, okay, Aaron, you can ask forgiveness, but also send out an intention. And what I did was with my consciousness, I just exploded a sense out into the universe of love. Love to everything. Love to certain people. Forgiveness of people. I offered forgiveness of my ex-wife. Unconditional happiness to the whole world. To some people I thought were not going to be happy with me after I was done the retreat. Nothing, whatever happens, I just wish you unconditional happiness and peace and love, and really just getting that out of me.
Right.
After that, I started, because my dosage was so low in the second...
By the way,
yeah.
When you had your dosage this time, did you actually speak to it?
I did. Actually. This time I did. Thank you for,
Right.
Because I did say, I said, Mother said, I want to experience love, happiness, and peace. Or how do I experience love, happiness, and peace? I spoke to the ayahuasca this time. I whispered it into the cup.
Right.
So yeah, I did actually do that. So, and the experience, like I said, was different, and it took me to different things where that was, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then after sort of the unconditional, love and thing, I started to come out of it a bit. The shaman was singing and it was kind of guiding me along, but I wasn't really paying attention to it. But what happened was, so I started to come out of it because my dosage was so low. I was probably only half the amount of time of the experience as my first time around.
Right.
So I started to come out of it, and Eric, the coordinator, came over to me and said, "Okay, Aaron, just relax." He started singing again just as Eric was coming over, and he said, "Aaron, just listen to the song."
Right.
He said, "Just let the medicine work, just listen to the song." And so what I did was I untethered my consciousness, and I concentrated on the song. So he was sitting over at about 45 degrees to my right, the shaman, and he was singing. And I said, "Okay, let go." And it was like a whirling tunnel of my consciousness. I wasn't seeing visuals, it was dark, but I could sense the swirling. And it was going out of my consciousness right to him. Boom. Like my consciousness was reaching out and touching him. Just swirl, swirl, swirl.
Right.
And just reaching out and touching him. And it was back and forth and this oscillating, where my consciousness was leaving my body, but it was going to him, and the song was just drawing it and back and forth. It was incredible, because then he stopped singing. I took myself out of it because I was starting to feel nauseous, and I really didn't want to feel nauseous, so I fought about it. I fought a little again. I had a lot more surrender this time than I had, but I still fought a bit. I let it go, and then when he stopped singing, I'd kind of come out of it because I was semi-conscious. When he started singing, I would go back into the trip.
Right.
Like, it's incredible. So then he came over. He'd go around to different people, and he would talk to them if they were conscious, and then say a blessing, and then sing over them, whatever. So he came over to me, and he sang, and my consciousness was just doing its thing. And I don't really remember a lot of visuals, but I do remember like the movement, the sensing the movement with the song as it was going. He stopped singing, and then he said a blessing over me. Like he went on, and it went on for like 5 minutes. I don't know what he was saying. He was invoking the Holy Spirit, that much Spiritu Sanctus. Like I got that out of the whole thing. He was invoking, and then he went. He blew over me just with his breath, and it was like I was covered in these scales almost. They were some of them were down, some of them were upright, some of them were angled. And he breathed, and that's what came over me. And then he moved his hands from my head to my feet, blowing. Ryan, so the visual was the scales all straightened out, but the physical effect was, I described it at the time as like he was pulling a blanket over me and the effect that you feel, but it was more than that. It was like my entire consciousness and physical body just straightened out, and he went, oh, because this guy, apparently, Master Pablo, the coordinator that left said to me, he said, "Aaron, this guy is the real deal, because he can see your visions." And she said, "I didn't believe it when I first met him. I thought it was a bunch of BS, basically."
Right.
And his first night working with the coordinator that was so good, I guess this one woman had been dreaming about rivers and drowning or something like that, and she didn't express anything. But he said to the coordinator, Master Pablo said to the coordinator, "Oh, she's dreaming about being by the river and maybe jumping into that river." He said, "This is what I'm seeing in the vision," because he would ingest a little bit of ayahuasca, and your consciousness would be united between the two, between shaman, between master and person who is undergoing this. And she's like, yeah, whatever. You don't know it, whatever. The next day, guess what came out of her mouth? Yeah, I was having this vision of being by a river, and I was thinking about jumping in. Well, Purina just about shit her drawers. He knew.
Yeah.
So he knew what was going on inside of me.
Right.
He knew that he had basically just realigned my entire consciousness. Whoa. And he was happy, and he was laughing, and he's like, oh, you're having a good time, good, that's excellent, you know.
Right.
Then he went off to somebody else who maybe wasn't having a good time, and somebody else was having a wonderful experience. There was another lady who was, her first night was not a lot of fun with the other maestro either, but then with this time, she had these breakthroughs, and she was a totally different person from the first night to the second. I don't know that I was a totally different person, but I gotta tell you, my experience the second time around was, I was very glad that I was supposed to do 3 ayahuasca sessions. I only ended up doing 2 just because, like I said, the first session was way too much.
Right.
I was insanely grateful to Maestro Pablo and to Purina, the coordinator, who suggested that I do it a second time. Because I did end up on a high note. And I didn't get the sense that I shouldn't do it again. I got the sense that, but I do, like to this, like I said, I still don't like it.
Right.
I don't like the feeling.
Right.
I don't know that psychedelics are my teacher. I don't know. Graham Hancock, for instance, says ayahuasca is his teacher. And he's been, God knows how many ayahuasca sessions. Like he does the 2 weeks where you do 5 sessions, and he's been doing that, you know, every 18 months or so for 15 years, probably pretty close.
Right.
That's not going to happen for me.
Yeah.
I am grateful for the ayahuasca experience. I am grateful for the lessons that I learned, for the experiences that I've had, and the people that I met. I am grateful to have learned that, in fact, the medicine is the teacher. Ayahuasca is the teacher.
Right.
But the maestro that mediates is fundamentally important.
Right.
And so if you are going to do an ayahuasca session, it is fundamentally important that you work with somebody who knows what they're doing. Because otherwise you could have some bad things. Now, both shamans, like I said, they were okay. Like the
Right.
one guy was okay. He was qualified. Technical. He was
fine.
very technical.
Yeah.
The second one just took me to a whole other level. Took me past the, the regrets and all that, and the death experience, to the spiritual level, to a much more spiritual, metaphysical level than I had on that first night. And it was because of, part of it was my intention, no question. Part of it was probably because that's where ayahuasca said, okay, you've had your nasty night, now it's time to explore some other things.
Right.
Undoubtedly, a huge portion of it was because the shaman's approach that I worked with was very, very different.
Right.
And that's key.
So, okay, so a couple of questions that I've got. Let's start with, now, from what I've read and heard, a lot of the shamans themselves feel that ayahuasca is almost like the gate, like not the gateway, but the teacher, the one who's going to show you the medicines.
Yeah.
Right? It's a medicine itself, yes, but it's also one, like if they need something to cure someone, they'll go to the ayahuasca, and ayahuasca is going to show them what that is.
Yeah.
Then they go find the medicine. So do you come away with any sense of something that the ayahuasca showed you that's gonna help you now if you go and find that medicine, whatever it showed you?
I'm gonna say no, I don't think I had it. I know, so for instance, I know what you're saying is, so Maestro Pablo apparently, before he came to the retreat center that last night I was there, apparently the reason why he wasn't there was because he was in the jungle. He had some sort of liver or lung disease. He went to Mother Ayahuasca. Mother Ayahuasca said, these are the plants that you need to treat it.
Right.
And he spent weeks and weeks in the jungle curing himself before he came back out.
Right.
I think, for me, to be honest with you, now that I say that I'm probably not going to try ayahuasca again, I don't think I've spent enough time with ayahuasca to get that message.
Well, that, and
Yeah.
you know, like now that I'm even thinking about the question in a way,
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't go there looking for a cure for anything either.
That's true.
So there's the difference there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but
I mean, yeah, if you go with that intention,
right.
and you haven't, if you experience working with the medicine, then you probably will get that teaching.
Right. What you're gonna find.
Yeah.
This is less a question than just perhaps an observation, but it did strike me from your descriptions of ayahuasca, there's far more like you're getting visions, a lot stronger visions than you might get doing other psychedelics. Like my experience with psychedelics, I had the one experience where I did have visions, but most of my experiences on psychedelic was just opening a door to perceive the vitality and the life and everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like, if anything, that's what the thing that I really took away from it that I think helps my life in general is that new perception, having that door open.
Right.
Because I don't think, even though people who've never done, psychedelics or hallucinogens, I know that some of them would call bullshit and say, no, you were just on drugs or whatever.
Yeah.
But I really do think it's a door to perceiving something that's real that you can't perceive otherwise. It strikes me that the ayahuasca opens a different kind of a door.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And it's interesting that you mentioned it, in comparison to other drugs. So one of the guys that was there has, like I said, he did pure DMT. His description was that in reality, the nature of his experience between smoking the pure DMT and the ayahuasca his visions were essentially the same between the two, because that's the psychoactive substance. If you use a different psychoactive substance, maybe that's the case. He said the only difference was with smoking pure DMT or injecting pure DMT, it only lasts 10 minutes, and you don't get the nausea and that sort of thing along with it, and it doesn't. So it doesn't last as long nearly, But he said it for him it was the same gateway. Now I'm gonna say to be honest with you, I've never tried any other psychedelics, so I guess I don't have enough of a reference to compare.
Right.
I have heard from other people, like even with pure DMT, the difference is that with ayahuasca works with you. Ayahuasca, it's more, fluid and moving. Pure DMT is like, boom, you're gone, and you have no control. You're not coming out of it for the 10 minutes. You are just gonna sit there and you're gonna take whatever it has to give you.
Right.
Ayahuasca does that, but it's not negotiating with it, but it's because you can fight with it and you can come out of it because it's not nearly as rocket ship to the moon. I mean, if you let go of yourself, you can have that rocket ship to the moon experience.
Right.
But it's more give and take. It's more it's more tug of war. That's what I would say. Not give and take, because like I said, it's not a negotiation. Ayahuasca will show you what it wants to show you.
Right.
And that's just it. Like you just have to live with that. But it's like you can tug a war with it. The more you tug a war with ayahuasca, the harder it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Your best
just let
approach
it,
is
let
to
it
go
go.
with the
Let it go. Just let it. You're gonna be fine.
Right.
I had a hard time believing I was gonna be fine, but I now know you're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Just let it go. But I guess I don't have enough of a comparison with mushrooms and that sort of thing to.
Yeah.
Really,
Well,
to
I
say.
know from my experience that different things are give you different experiences. Because my very first experience with a psychedelic was with LSD.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that was I recognize now that was a very chemical experience.
Right.
It's very different. You get hallucinations and such. But the kind of thing you were talking about with your hand, where you're seeing,
Yeah.
seeing tracers and
Yeah,
this
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of thing,
yeah,
or
yeah,
the
yeah.
floor. You might send a wave off that
Yeah.
way with your foot, kind
Yeah.
of a thing. But it is very it's a real chemical-y type.
Right. Yeah, it's not organic in
That's
the same
right.
way that
That's
Yeah,
right.
ayahuasca is very. Yeah. So
Yeah.
from that perspective, I can tell you, ayahuasca is organic. It's very nature based.
Yeah.
You sense the plant.
Yeah. 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 And this is how the mushrooms are, because I
Yeah.
tried the classic psilocybin mushroom, that everybody can buy from.
Yeah.
It's just in the drug trade, and that was a much more organic experience. And there's a lot of felt very, a lot of love, and you get to see the vitality and everything. You see the life and everything, but there is a kind of a euphoricness that comes with
Right,
it. Okay?
yeah.
Euphoricness and a love for everything.
Yeah.
And then there was Liberty Cap mushrooms, which are still a psilocybin,
Mhm.
but it's a different.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
very different psilocybin,
Yeah.
and it's still very, very earthy, but you don't get the same kind of euphoria as you do
Right.
with the Liberty Caps. Can go creepy on you. You see the vitality and everything, but you also see you see the life and everything, and you see the death and everything
Right.
at
Okay.
the same time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you can I think much more easily go down the creepy road with the
Oh, okay.
with
Yeah.
the Liberty Caps, where you're at least that's what I had the death experience on, but I know that even the times that I used that mushroom that I didn't have the death experience on, I still could see the death in all the things I saw the life in. I saw the simultaneous death in.
Okay. Okay.
The decomposition of
Oh,
everything, and the
okay.
death of everything, and the
Interesting.
darkness of it too.
How Buddhist.
Yeah.
The impermanence of the material.
But it wasn't.
Yeah.
In
yeah,
all
yeah.
the experiences, other than the last time with the Liberty Caps, there wasn't any vision experiences where what's
It was
tangible around you
Right.
turns off and you're
Yeah, in a
vision
different space. Yeah, it was more perception of
That's
what was
right.
around with
That's
you.
right.
Okay, yeah, and see, you might be able to have that with ayahuasca. I don't know. There was nobody that I was there with. You might have the euphoria with ayahuasca. I don't know.
Right.
Nobody that was at the retreat center reported
Mhm.
anything like that. I don't know that I've ever heard that with ayahuasca. But maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it sounds to me like a very different kind of experience.
It's. I think it's unique.
Mm.
It's just like anything else. It's unique to where it's where you're at in the world.
Mm.
So.
Right.
Yeah. So then at the end of it, so we had the group share the last day, and then we had the last thing we did a closing ceremony, giving back to Mother Earth, to Pachamama, and the Kero shaman, same one that closed it with that ceremony, and yeah.
Do you feel that it's important to have this experience in Peru? Like, I know that ayahuasca is making its way north.
It is, yeah.
And-
You can do it in the States.
Right. So do you think the experience would be very different for you? Yeah, like for me, I'm very place conscious at this point in my life.
Yeah.
But I think I've been place conscious for a while, and even with Liberty Caps, I felt like the Liberty Caps experience in the place where the Liberty Caps grow
Oh,
was important.
okay.
Yeah.
Maybe, right. I don't know. I mean, I guess because I suppose I need to see if I tried it in the jungle.
Something that comes, it's
Yeah.
from there, and you're actually kind of,
You're immersed in it.
you could become
Yeah.
immersed in the place as much as anything else.
Right,
It's like this
yeah.
is part of the place. This is part of the experience of this place.
It may very well be. It's entirely possible. I guess I'd need to see what it would be like if I tried it in the jungle.
Right.
Um,
But you were still at least.
I was there. I was in Peru, but I wasn't. I mean, the jungle experience is very different because you're when you go to those. I mean, and So when you go to Iquitos in the north, which is ayahuasca Mecca, basically, you have to be really careful where you go. Do your research. If you're going to try ayahuasca at all, do your research on the center. And there's different sites. There's iAdvisor, even TripAdvisor has some online. They have some things. I have heard that one of the things the people here in the jungle that was absent from my experience is that you get the noise of the jungle, really has an effect on the experience because there's birds and
Right.
panther or whatever the hell I've got, in the jungle, right?
Right.
And even the environment itself, is you're surrounded by trees and vines and the ground and, just is different. So I suppose maybe there might be something there. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it would depend if you were actually in that space, not in a hut or in a building or something like that.
And most places, I think, like, they do it in some sort of enclosure.
Right.
They don't necessarily do it. I guess I'm guessing. All the pictures that I've seen, of other ayahuasca ceremonies is that even if it's in the jungle, it's in some side of enclosure within the jungle. So I don't know.
Wow. So you did it. You survived.
I did it. I survived.
You experienced ayahuasca.
Yeah.
It definitely has given you something that'll that you'll be working with for a while.
I think so. Yeah. They say that actually the medicine stays in your system, and I did have an experience of this actually even coming home, because it's been now 8 days since my second ayahuasca session. They say the medicine stays inside of you for 7 days. The second time, the effects lingered longer because I didn't throw up.
Right.
So the medicine never did leave my system. Like through vomiting or going to the bathroom, the medicine never left my system. So I did notice in the second time that it actually, because it retained in my body, I didn't actually, some of the introspective, but also some of the actual physical sensations remained longer, even though it was a smaller dose.
Yeah.
But because I never it never left my system. It never,
That's right.
It never went out.
Kept it in.
Yeah. So even when I got home the first night, I had some minor hallucinations. Now, the one thing they tell you at Ednika's is that, so a lot of the dietary and other restrictions are lifted. The one thing they tell you is do not eat pig. For 7 days, do not go near a pig. And I did that for about 6.5 because I had ham at my girlfriend's mother's place there on the night that I came back. So I was pretty close to making it 7 days, and I seemed to be okay. I thought I was going to give up coffee, but I actually had some when I got back. And I don't drink as much as I did before. But yeah, I am going to change some of my dietary things. I lost probably 10-15 pounds. A lot of that was the fasting, a lot of that was the throwing up, a lot of that was the being away, and just sort of some of the other experiences, I guess, that I had there. But yeah, it's I encourage you, a few things. So ayahuasca is not for the faint of heart. Do not go into something with ayahuasca with half heart or thinking it's just going to be a fun trip. You will not have a fun experience. One guy at the retreat center, he'd actually tried ayahuasca 6 years before, but he did it totally on a recreational basis. They were eating and, meat and whatever, and they were sitting around in the living room and they figured, hey, let's do shots of ayahuasca and see what happens. And it was a nightmare experience for him. An absolute nightmare experience for him.
Right.
So, do not do that. It is not something to play with.
Yeah.
There are other things I suppose you can use for recreation. Ayahuasca is not it. It is a teacher. It is a medicine. And I'm sure if you listen to any podcast listening about ayahuasca, everybody says the same thing. Take it from somebody who now knows. Do not screw around with ayahuasca. It is to be respected.
Right. Yeah. Do you think now? This is my last question.
Sure. No, that's good. No, that's fine. Yeah.
It just came to me that going back to Graham Hancock.
Yeah.
And this idea that there's something fundamental in the development of human society and spirituality and such that comes from these kind of psychedelic experiences. Do you feel that that's the case?
I'm going to tell you, Ryan, I was thinking about this because in a lot of ways, there was a spiritual component to what I was doing, but a lot of it was, certainly the first time was more about my consciousness, my psychology. The second time was more visionary space. I think I gotta tell you, I think some people, ayahuasca awakens their spirituality. Certainly it did for Graham Hancock.
Right.
I'm gonna argue, though, and this is just me guessing, the reason why it has such an effect on some people is because they don't have a spirituality going into it.
Right.
If you have a sense, I mean, a lot of the stuff that people report and the sensations that they feel and the realizations that they have, I have had the inbreaking of spirit at other times in my life through meditation,
Right.
through other things, and I've lived a spiritual life in my past. I think I didn't get an overly strong sense of spirit per se from ayahuasca, but I didn't get it because somebody may disagree with me with this, I already had it.
Right.
I already had that sense of spirit, that recognition on my own part that I have my spiritual beliefs are already there, and I didn't need Mother Ayahuasca to show me that.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
I would agree with you. Which is what I was wondering how you felt about that
Yeah.
now after having the experience. Some people,
Sure.
like Graham, think that you
Well,
need
Graham,
that to
yeah,
open
and
the door.
Graham, I can't speak for Graham exactly, but
Right.
based on what I've heard Graham say, and Amber Lyon the same way,
Right.
the reason why it has become a spiritual teacher is that I'm pretty sure, I don't know, but I'm guessing, but what I've derived from listening to what Graham said and what he's had written, he was not a spiritual man.
Yeah.
He was not. He is still atheistic, but he's got a different. He says he's atheistic. I don't actually believe he is. He's just using different words for basically describing a similar experience for people that call themselves theists. He would probably disagree with that, but as
Right.
one who's listened to a lot of atheists and non-atheists banter about, a lot of it is just about semantics. It's not actual. I mean, the concepts themselves are. Anyway, they're there. He's got a genuine spirituality, and
Right.
let's just leave it at that. But prior to his ayahuasca, I don't know that he did.
Yeah.
I don't know that he did.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see. I mean, a lot of people want to say, hey, let's see what happens with Richard Dawkins with ayahuasca, or Penn and Teller for that matter.
Oh yeah. Very skeptical.
Give them some ayahuasca and let's watch what happens.
Right. I think they'd have a very bad experience. because I
Well, they
think
might
would-
very well. Yeah,
Yeah.
they might very well. I mean, I got to tell you, I rolled my eyes and I went and saw them in Vegas in May, and I just kind of some of this stuff. I mean, I get into a discussion with a couple of podcasts about the whole idea of spirituality, and I have a friend who's he is an absolute out and out logical positivist. Nothing that modern science cannot touch and cannot explain, and if it can't explain it now, don't worry, in 100 years from now it's going to explain. And what he doesn't understand is that is a belief system and a religion in as much as anything else is.
Right.
And I think he doesn't have a full grasp of reality.
Yeah.
That's my perception of it. There are some things that you don't, and if he had an ayahuasca experience, it'd be interesting to see what came out of it, because if you're not spiritual, ayahuasca can actually switch you on and show you that there are other levels of reality than the one that you think is the end all and be all.
And if you already have it, it can be a
Yeah.
tool for
Yeah.
further growth and what have you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad that that's your perspective, because I think I share that, because I'm coming from a tradition up here where there's none of that kind of.
Yep.
There's no psychedelic, no intense psychedelic experience, unless you want to count fasting and what that.
Well,
can do
and
for
that
you.
and it can be the same thing.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
can be the same thing. I've had deep form of meditations that, quite frankly, I had more visions in than I did on my first session of ayahuasca. How's that?
Yeah.
I mean, it is possible to get to that. The thing with psychedelics is that if you haven't had that experience in your life, if you haven't been able to come through fasting, through meditation, through what have you, the substance, I hate to say this, it is and it isn't. It's almost like a shortcut. Because it's like, come here.
Right.
It grabs you and says, listen, this is what everybody's been talking about.
Right.
And that's why when your original question is, in terms of switching on consciousness, what Graham Hancock had to say, yeah,
Yeah.
because they didn't have it.
Right. Right.
For them, for people 40,000 years ago, or however long it was, I mean, shit gets older and older, so we got to question actually how long human consciousness has actually been up and running in the way that we perceive it now. But yeah, they were looking for food, and that was pretty much it, and shelter, and yeah. So you get experience to a mushroom trip. That's going to take you to a whole other level. Your perception of it's going to be different because you never had it before.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right on.
Good.
So, yeah, it's been good, and this has been a long-awaited conversation.
It has, yeah. No, and I appreciate you doing the interview piece. So, yeah. So, for the other listeners, there's lots coming too. We took a bit of a sabbatical, like we were talking about, and I think we've got about 5 or 6 podcasts lined up in the next couple of weeks. So
yeah, we're making up for it with a double dose.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this is definitely a long one. We've never had to split it into 2 before. So anyway, thanks everybody, and thanks again, Ryan. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
and,
well, I'm honored for you asking me to be the guy to interview you after this experience.
Well, yeah,
this is a big one for you.
I figured that you'd have some good reference and questions to ask, so I appreciate it. Good. All right, thanks everyone. Take care.